Everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Barlaan. I am the Vice President of Women's Federation for World Peace International and the Director of the UN Relations Office here in New York. Welcome to our UN Roundtable Talk with Women's Federation for World Peace International. And today is a special day. We have a very special guest all the way from the Philippines, Chairperson Jennifer Sibug-las, the current chairperson of the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, ethnographic commissioner for Central Mindanao, a staunch advocate for indigenous peoples and OFW rights. She has received numerous national awards for her leadership in cultural preservation, customary law, and IP welfare. It's really such an honor for Women's Federation to have a close-up, in-depth conversation with you.
Thank you, Mamberly, and for the very kind remarks. And I feel honored and humbled at the same time to be here in your office here in New York. And it's such a pleasure to see you once again, right after our UNCSW engagement last year.
Last year was the first time we clicked right away, right? We knew that we have something that we can do together productively and impact.
Yes, and I'd like to take this opportunity as well to, thank the organization and most particularly, most especially you for really taking time and being able to realize the dream of the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples to hold a parallel event.
It's our honor. It's our honor.
With the UNPFII event in the United Nations headquarters. So thank you very much, of course, to JCI as well for making things possible for NCIP and for the indigenous peoples in the Philippines.
It is our great honor. I mean, to serve the indigenous peoples and highlight the issues of the indigenous peoples, especially in the Philippines and around the world as well. While we're at it, we did the side event, our parallel event together. Could you give us, for those who don't know what is UNPFII, could you give us a bit of explanation about this conference?
Okay, the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues is actually a global platform wherein all the indigenous peoples of the world and all those civil society organizations that are working for the recognition, respect, promotion, and protection of the rights of the indigenous peoples, as well as the government states or member states, will all be present to share their current context of indigenous issues within their areas of responsibilities. Second is that they're able to share as well the milestones that have been done by the member states in favor of the indigenous peoples within their country. And then last would be the platform for dialogue wherein both parties will be able to share with each other those issues and concerns that need to be resolved by them during the event. So
I was speaking to my director, in fact, yesterday from Geneva. She is the president of the NGOCSW Commission and the Status of Women in Geneva. And also she's very active with the Human Rights Council in Geneva. And she was telling me, actually, the indigenous people's issues are now taking mainstream and center stage in the conversation in the Human Rights Council. Before, it was not like that. It was just in the margins. And the last 3 years, now the issues of the indigenous peoples are taking center stage and mainstream. So, like the last 15 years, it was the gender issues and all that. But the last 3 years, and especially last year and this year in the Human Rights Council. And I was so happy that, okay, oh my God, so we are on time and we are on point I think this is a great platform for the indigenous peoples, and especially you're bringing with you the voices of the 16 million
16 million.
indigenous peoples in the
16 million indigenous peoples around across the Philippines, across the country.
Wow. So that's what, roughly 20% of the population?
16 to 20%.
Yeah, yeah. That's a big responsibility. Now, you are as the highest decision maker for the indigenous peoples of the Philippines. And as a woman leader, a princess. She's actually a princess. And your father was Joseph, Joseph Guapo Sibog. Yes. Um, what are your challenges as the highest decision maker for the IPs?
Okay, I'm just a chairperson, but the highest policy or governing body as to the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples is the Commission on MA. It's composed of 7 ethnographic commissioners representing the ethnographic regions all over the country. So right now, we only have 6 because one resigned from his post last year. So now we are operating as one body composing of 6 commissioners. But as a CEO of the agency, it's really challenging job for me because there's so many challenges that indigenous people are facing right now at the moment, especially as regards land rights and displacement when there are projects, when there are developments. Um, the indigenous peoples tend to move from their original place, from their ancestral domains to other relocation where they will be settled. So much so that the project that are being the projects being introduced will be able to be implemented in their area. Second is marginalization and discrimination. We know very well that there's still lack of access to education, to health, and economic opportunities. And then third would be environmental degradation. We know very well when there are projects coming in, the environment, the indigenous peoples tend to, deteriorate. And this is because of, the cutting of the trees. There are areas that forests that are denuded already. So these are really some of the challenges that
these are existential threats. It's not just challenges, right? It's beyond. Yes.
As a woman, you know very well how we exist as persons or as individuals. We are very resilient. At the same time, we are nurturing. So we know very well when there are issues and concerns, we don't really just leave them behind, but, take action right away just so that we would be able to address the gaps and address the needs of our IPs who are in need. So that's about it. And being the daughter of the late Dato Joseph Guabong Sibug, the first sectoral representative in the August Halls of Congress representing the indigenous cultural communities and indigenous peoples, at a very young age, I was already equipped um, meeting all the indigenous leaders all over the country. I was immersed on how the customary laws would govern the indigenous communities, how to maintain the peace and order within their areas. And so I think most of the experiences when I was a child up to the time that I was employed at the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples formed part of who I am today, being the head of the agency. Yeah.
Well, that's very important because, if we want to promote policies and solve the challenges, we need to have a real life lived experience. And, many of the challenges of our current lawmakers, policymakers, they are people with good heart and, they're smart and they're well educated. But I think that the missing link is the lived experiences. So therefore, no matter how much they try to come up with solutions, it's lacking because they're never there, right? They never grow up in that community. So I think it is really important, and that is very empowering for especially for the IP families and the young people. During your term, what are your goals that you want to achieve, and how far are you?
Well, um, as the office mandated to formulate and implement plans, projects, and programs for the empowerment of the indigenous peoples, I believe we're in that framework that we have to promote national unity and development,
Mhm.
not just amongst indigenous peoples communities, but also by bridging the gaps between the
Yes.
government and the indigenous peoples and other stakeholders, and balancing both the interests of the government and the indigenous peoples. It's very hard because both have different perspectives, but both will have to meet in order to foster the peace and harmony that we should institutionalize or we should implement within our government. So I think that's very important that we need to balance.
Yes,
both.
yes, that's really important. So in terms of uh, the community, the IPs, I know that you have your own culture, you have your ways, the micro governance in each of the tribes, right? So the national, a unified goal. Um, how are you receiving? How are they receiving your goals, or are they cooperating? What's the attitudes?
But we should remember that the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act was a result of a nationwide consultation and the battle cry advocacy of the Indigenous peoples all over the country. And so, enshrined in the law are actually the four bundles of rights. The first one is the rights to ancestral domains and lands. Second is the rights to self-determination and empowerment, self-governance and empowerment. Number three is social justice and human rights. And four, it's about cultural integrity. So four, four of these rights are actually interdependent on each other, especially so that the heart of the IPRA is the ancestral domains. Everything is focused on the ancestral domains. Without the land, there's no right to self-determination and governance. Number two, there's no um, right to social justice and human rights without the ancestral domains. And lastly, how do we practice our cultures and traditions, or how do we live our identity as indigenous peoples? It's still anchored on our territory or in our community as indigenous people. So how do indigenous peoples take all of these works and all these actions that we are doing? It's actually anchored on their as dreams and aspirations. So it's not just NCIP doing all this policy development, but it's always anchored on the dreams, aspirations, and as well as the policies that the indigenous peoples would want to be institutionalized, most particularly in their ancestral territories.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, as far as I know, the Philippine government, we have a lot of really empowered and very capable women leaders, whether it's at the United Nations. For example, the Magna Carta on Women, it's institutionalized. There are national mechanism and instruments embedded in the local government. I wonder if for the IPs, is the government or are the local governments um, accountable? Are they really implementing it with the IPs in mind? The young people, the education, the facilities. Are they um, are they implementing it in the local policies?
Since we have a law that really protects indigenous peoples, part of the implementation are also focused on women And there are also laws that are also protecting them, the indigenous women and girls. Like, for example, the Republic Act 9262, the violence against women and children, the anti-vowsy. And then we also have the anti-trafficking and the Magna Carta for Women as well, wherein the indigenous women voices are being heard and being valued and given space for them to be able to, you know, air out their concerns, most particularly in their communities where they belong.
My other question is, you've been here almost 2 weeks now, and as I said in the beginning, by far she's the most hardworking government official. Statements after statement. I wonder if she ever sleep these days. But you look like you got your beauty rest. But my question: what are your takeaways? What do you think is something that the Philippines, the Filipino IPs can benefit from this conference at the UN?
Well, I think it's more on raising awareness on how the indigenous peoples are in the Philippine context. Because a lot of postings now went viral, particularly on those issues.
Yes, the
concerning
Pinatubo, right? Was it
Pinatubo,
Yeah.
What else? There, Maria Hangin, and also I think those were also noted and given attention by the forum, because I believe in some of the discussions it was also shared by one rapporteur. I think it was Francisco Chai, and with that we're able as well as a member of a member state of the UNPFII, we were able also to, you know, address, and we were able to respond to the call very timely. And that, again, it's all about raising awareness.
Yes.
So, on how the indigenous peoples of the Philippines are being taken care of by the government, being a government that has a landmark legislation that was enacted prior to the UNDRIP. 10 years before the UNDRIP was institutionalized, was the Republic Act 8371, or otherwise known as Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act of 1997. It was enacted in the Philippines 10 years before the UNDRIP. So we take pride in sharing to the world that the Philippines has this landmark legislation. However, while we also, while we take pride in doing so, we have already taken significant strides in serving our indigenous peoples, that there are more challenges ahead and there's more actions to be taken, so much so that all their issues and concerns be addressed accordingly and appropriately.
But this is something that we really can be proud of our Philippine legislators. They're trailblazers. I must say they're very good at trailblazing policies. Even before the global agenda is being discussed at the UN, they already know what are the issues that need to be addressed, and then therefore create mandates, UN resolutions, and policy framework around that. So that's Filipinos are really good at that, and it's something that we can be proud of. Talking about SDGs, we have 5 more years, and if we are to benchmark the achievement of the SDGs in the context of the realities of the indigenous peoples, how impactful are the SDGs, and which of those 17 SDGs that are really relevant to the IPs?
Well, first is food security.
We know SDG 1,
SDG 1, no 2,
and 2.
Yes. And many others. Like, for example, as I've mentioned a while ago, that we would want to at least resolve the issue on marginalization and discrimination when there's lack of access to health and education, and more so in economic opportunities as well. And so there's a lot to be done, but the Philippines, especially the indigenous peoples, and through the NCIP, we're actually on that level of anchoring all our policies on SDGs, that it be, it be aligned with the 8-point economic agenda of the president, as well as our development agenda, as well of the the current administration, and lastly, in alignment with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So we are very particular with, of course, with our projects that are being implemented in our ancestral domains. One of which was, I was supposed to, identify and share it specifically during the parallel event. But because of time constraints, we were able to miss out on that. But we had this project. It started in 2024. It was the Hapag Katutubo project. It was a project that addresses the lack of food.
Food.
Yeah, lack of
Hapag is the table.
table.
Table. Yeah, I say I'm still
So
I'm still
they
updated.
provide agricultural opportunities for our indigenous peoples, to plant fruit trees and other trees that would be able to help them economically and to be able to sustain their livelihood and their ways of life while being in their ancestral territories. So,
I'm really glad to hear that because it's very close to our heart. Women's Federation has championed our environmental project, which is the permaculture literacy program. This is our climate action program, but also it's the I studied permaculture and it's really indigenous. It's the knowledge and wisdom is based from the wisdom of the indigenous peoples, their practices, and then we're bringing it to mainstream. And we have expanded it to 10 countries now. And in Philippines, we have the Asia Pacific Peace Education Center in Bohol. We want to make it as the hub for permaculture education. And yeah, we look forward to uh, working with your indigenous, the tribes, because I'm sure that you have knowledge there and we can share best practices.
yes,
Yeah,
of
the
course.
community development is ours, um my strength actually in terms of contributions to the grassroots, the women and young people. But you have with you today, I mean, in this delegation from the Aita tribe,
Yes.
from Pampanga.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce her. She is Ma'am Evangeline.
Evangeline, yes,
Rodriguez.
yes. Lovely to meet
Yeah.
you.
Part of
Welcome.
yes,
to New York.
Kimberly. Part of our intergenerational transmission of responsibility and obligation is to continue the relationship that our fathers, when during their lifetime, had formed. So my father used to work with his father, and
Wow.
they were in the advocacy of fighting for the enactment of the IPRA, for the Indigenous People's Rights Act. So now that uh, our fathers have already, left us, I believe that we continue.
You took on the baton.
Yeah.
You're the second generation.
Yes, the second liners.
That's beautiful.
Yes, to finish the unfinished mission of our parents.
That's really wonderful. So, Evangeline, tell us a little bit more
Yes,
about
ma'am.
your Aita.
Yeah,
Aita tribe.
I belong to Aita tribe in Subic. SBMA is part of our ancestral domain. And currently, I am the national president for IT Women. It is called AKAP, Alyansa ng Katutubong Kababaihan ng Pilipinas.
Mhm.
And as of now, we have projects. Number one is the One Tribe, One Product. This is one of our sustainable livelihood programs for all the IPs across the nation. And also, we are now into uh, setting up a place. It is called shared service facilities, wherein we put on all the tools for the IPs to use, because we have a lot of furniture maker, a handicraft maker, but they don't have the tools. So we're putting up a place wherein they all go there, and then they can do what crafts do they have.
Economic empowerment,
Yes.
long term. So
Yes,
I
it's a
like
long term.
it because a lot of the civil society projects is outreach and short term, short term project. But when you empower them economically, yes, that's long term.
Yes.
Is this the first time you're participating here at the UN conference?
Yes. This is
How
my
was it
first-
for you?
It's really, for me, the experience is really, it's amazing. I just don't know how I feel, but knowing that this is one way to empower, one way of promoting the IPs right here. So I am more than happy to be here.
Wow, that I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, I wish we have more time we could talk all day, for
Yeah.
days. So there have so much to talk about, but we are constrained with time. But I think our conversation this time is very important, and it's educational.
Yes.
It's insightful, it's hopeful, it's empowering. And for next year, I hope that we'll see more of IP women and young people. Yeah, it's different when you advocate for your right at the local level, but it's totally different when you come to the United Nations and interact with the other IPs, right? Um, it's another level of education.
May this be the beginning of our partnership with the Filipino IPs. Yeah, and I know that we can do more.
Yes,
In partnership
yes,
with
then.
you.
Yes,
Yes,
then.
Just enforcing as well the message of from Evangeline. Yes, we are very grateful, beyond grateful to Women's Federation for World Peace International for the opportunities that you have opened for not just the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, but more so for the Indigenous peoples in the Philippines. We are so blessed to have known you, to have known this organization, because again, we are always in that framework that we cannot do everything alone. In fact, we need partners to be able to join us in our advocacy and assertion of recognizing, respecting, promoting, and protecting the rights of the Indigenous peoples, most particularly our women and girls. So, with that, um, we grew up really looking and seeing and witnessing our fathers fight for the rights of our Indigenous peoples, and that we saw their hardships, their sacrifices that really resulted to the enactment of the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act. And so, with that being said, I believe that with the law that we have protecting us, what we really need right now is for more partners to be able to uphold that principle that no one shall be left behind. And in conversations that would cater to the Indigenous peoples, especially in policy development and in the development of the ancestral domains, and in concern and issues concerning the Indigenous peoples, it's very important that the Indigenous peoples should be on the table to be able to be the voice and to have their own spaces, especially in platforms like this and in the United Nations as well. So thank you very much, Kimberly. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's both ways for me also. It's a dream come true because my first TFW, Commission on Status of Women, back in 2010, or even earlier than that, I always think that, okay, the UN can only be impactful and fulfill its purpose when the issues are brought down to the local level. And what I saw at that time, this is like 20 years ago, was that there in the decision making table there were no rural women, and so I said, okay, I want to raise young people from Muntisonting, from the rural women in the remote areas, and let them come to the UN, because when there is the stakeholder, that very stakeholder sit at the decision making table, they know what to advocate, they know what to fight for. And this week I've seen it, you're here, Evangeline, and the chairperson of the NCIP is here, and so we're really getting closer to where we want to be. And when you say no one should be left behind, right? And Women's Federation want to take it to the next level. It should be for the IPs. The IPs should be the trailblazer in terms of national development agenda and global development agenda, particularly in the realm of the world peace. So my dream is to see IPs, young women, young people, to be the a major stakeholder and trailblazer in establishing a world of peace. They can be the peace-loving global peace leaders, transcending the barriers of poverty. So this is our goal, and this week has been really special, a dream come true for both of us. And the future is about partnership, institutionalization, and implementation. And on that note, let's close this UN Roundtable talk. Thank you, everyone. I hope that you learn, and I hope that you gain some insights from the heart and the beautiful smile and the beautiful women of the indigenous peoples of the Philippines. And yeah, let's work together. Bye bye, everyone.
Yes, then.
Yes, then. Most hardworking chairperson, government official that I've ever seen at the United Nations. It's 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks, right? And still up and running. We have a statement to deliver later on today.
Yes, we're scheduled to do our final statement on behalf of the Philippine government. So